Good morning to everyone here in the room and to those tuning in via live stream. I am Elena Noor, Senior Fellow with the Asia Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And it is my distinct privilege this morning to introduce to you Henry Puna, Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, to deliver this morning's address. Mr. Puna is the 10th Secretary General and its first Cook Islander to assume the post. Secretary General Puna has had an illustrious ocean sustainability, clean, renewable energy, and connectivity. Secretary General Puna, welcome.
Growing up on the islands of Aitutaki and Rarotonga in the Cook Islands, I would never have imagined myself being catapulted to an important global platform such as this. Nevertheless, I thank you for the warm invitation and the opportunity to offer some reflections to frame your conversations over the next 2 days. It is in opportunities such as this that we take pause to see how far we have come and look forward to what lies ahead. If you look around us at the evolving global order today, I am sure you will agree that we live and exist in an increasingly polarized world. A world which continues to be dominated by the geopolitical tussle between two global superpowers. In the Pacific, we witnessed the introduction of foreign policy ideologies that seek to embed contrasting worldviews into our regional norms and standards. We see the strategic neglect of 10 years ago being replaced by the proliferation of regional strategies and consortiums that serve to shape and influence engagement with and in our region, tantamount to, if I put it quite frankly, strategic manipulation. We see these points of external influence increasingly creep into all facets of our operations, both at the national and at the regional level. Our Blue Pacific continent is an increasingly contested space. Regional and national stability is critical to maintaining and protecting peace and security, prosperity, and the well-being of all Pacific peoples. If I'm honest, we must realize that the strategic interest and attention we enjoy today will not last forever, and we must capitalize on it in a manner that will ensure sustainable gains for our region and for our people for decades to come. Our partnerships must be genuine and durable and premised on understanding, friendship, mutual benefit, and a collective ambition to achieve sustainable results. For far too long now, we have been regarded as mere dots or specks in the great Pacific Ocean. We have had to contend with and manage the challenges of our geographical isolation, the tyranny of distance, and the scarcity of resources in our island economies. But where we lacked individual endowment, we made up for in collective opportunities and resources. This, for us, has driven the development of the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. For us, this is more than just a strategy. It is a political commitment to Pacific regionalism by 18 heads of state and governments throughout the Pacific region. It is a collective vision for our future and the future of our people. It sets the foundation for directing how and on what we will work together as a collective, as a Blue Pacific continent. This is the blueprint that we will hold our partners to account for in measuring the value of your intervention in our region. It is the blueprint that will guide partnerships in our region. The 2050 strategy is our guide to the future that we want to see and the vision that we are working to achieve. It responds to the key challenges of our region in the 21st century, the primary one being the climate emergency. It takes into account our ongoing efforts to organize and position ourselves so that we are operating from a position of strength in terms of progressing our own economic development goals. It recognized the ocean and our oceanic resources as being central to our future. It reaffirms the centrality of our Pacific people and their well-being as being the core driver of our aspirations and goals. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that we all recognize that we are currently in a time of contested strategic competition. This contest that has catapulted the Pacific region to a platform of interest more broadly. We, to many around us, represent an area of strategic interest. We hear of the Belt and Road Initiative on the one hand, and we hear of the Indo-Pacific framing on the other. Often, we find ourselves navigating strategic maneuverings to lock us into a position on either issue. But our stance has been very clear. We will engage with any partner who is willing to work with us rather than around us. Indeed, this strategic interest has come with intense levels of engagement from external partners into the Pacific, both at the regional and national levels. But what we are seeing is a lot of engagement at all levels, but with little concrete actions and commitment. And this does nothing but further strain our already limited absorptive capacity. Indeed, power dynamics and power plays are not and have never been a driver of our collective interest and advocacy as a region. Unlike the Indo-Pacific framing, the core focus of the Blue Pacific continent represents our aspirations and our identity as the stewards of the Blue Pacific. It has always been our right to determine our destiny as a region, to define our goals and the future we want to see, and the preservation of our interests for our future generations. The onus is on us to strategically capitalize on this and turn this interest into tangible outcomes for our people. It is no secret that for us, climate change is our greatest single security threat. We need urgent climate action and advocacy now. We need to see a strong commitment to elevated, ambitious, and urgent climate action now. We cannot and should not be forced to constantly live under the threat of climate change and climate-induced disasters, while those most responsible for global warming continues to drag their feet when it comes to real and effective climate action. We need to expedite and finalize the ongoing discussions on global climate finance by COP28, including the funding arrangements for loss and damage and the new collective quantified goals. On ambitious and effective climate action, we have consistently advocated for the need to see ambitious commitments that will keep temperature increases below 1.5 degrees Celsius. The question has to be asked, how can we ensure stronger accountability through multilateral processes? Put simply, the work to be done is very clear. We call on our development partners to put aside your self-interest and profit motivations and join us in our fight against climate change. We have gone far beyond the threshold of mere tokenistic support now. We need support that forces the change that we need to see. Our very survival and that of our future generations is on the line. While we have continued our strong advocacy, we have also steadily built pioneering actions on climate policies globally. For example, championed by Vanuatu, we have made ripples in international law with the call for an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice. Similarly, the leadership of Tuvalu through the advisory opinion to the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, a progress of which I have been following very closely and with great interest. Collectively, we have introduced watershed political pieces that will trailblaze new areas in international law, such as the Declaration on Preserving Maritime Zones in the face of climate change-related sea level rise. And to address our climate finance access challenges, we have designed the Pacific Resilience Facility, a Pacific-led and owned financing facility to address our ongoing finance access issues and to help build resilience at the community level. In conclusion, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot underscore enough the importance of genuine and long-lasting partnerships, particularly to us in the Pacific. As we continue the voyage on this journey together, I can only hope that we will do so in a manner that is respectful of each other. I hope that we will continue to learn from each other and with each other as we forge a future for our countries, our regions, and indeed for our humanity. Me te mata, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary General Puna, for laying the ground for us to kick off our discussions over the next day and a half. I have at least one follow-up question for you, but I know some of you in the audience will have your own questions. Those of you tuning in through the live stream will have your own as well. So before I pose my question to you, Secretary General, I'd just like to encourage you, if you have any questions, there should be a QR code on the card placed in your seat or shared with you by our ushers. Please submit your question through that QR code and it will magically appear on my iPad. For those viewing online, please submit your questions in the YouTube chat and we will do our best to accommodate you in the conversation. We are running up against time, but perhaps I can pose my question to you, Secretary General. I'd like to pick up on where you left off and combine the question about strategic competition with the existential risk of climate change that Pacific Island countries face. Is there an opportunity for Pacific Island countries to make the most out of this strategic competition in order to force actionable change with regards to the climate crisis? I mean, Pacific Island countries have been crying out for decades now about the climate emergency. And unfortunately, it's fallen on deaf ears. Is there an opportunity now with all the major powers focused on your region, sir?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think there is every opportunity now for the Pacific, to make an impact and progress on the climate change issues that we have been advocating for so long. And as I said in my statement, this is an opportunity, given the geopolitical interest in our region, to work together, to bring about the changes that we need to see. And I made it clear that, it is a condition of our partnership with anybody who's willing to engage with us in the region, that they must commit, to serious and urgent climate action right now. We cannot wait. The science is very clear that time is running out for us, to make the changes that we need to have in place in order to mitigate the serious impacts of climate change that we're already seeing. So, and the 2050 strategy is a perfect vehicle for us in the Pacific, to have a coordinated and coherent mechanism for our collective advocacy. And it is something that we have been working towards and something that we're enjoying right now in order that we can have a collective and a united front when we are addressing the world with regards to our important messages, not just on climate change, but on other issues of importance to the region too.
What I love about the 2050 strategy is the marriage of scientific evidence plus the traditional and community and indigenous knowledge of Pacific Islanders themselves. And I think a lot of these stories are often missed in the mainstream media. What kind of role do you foresee knowledge from the community of Pacific Island nations, given essentially you are stewards and shepherds of the oceans, that can be brought to the world in order for us to pay greater attention to the damage that we ourselves are causing to the environment?
Well, traditional knowledge has always been a cornerstone of Pacific culture. And we've been urging the world to take account of traditional knowledge. But I must say that at the same time, we also rely a lot on science to guide our actions. But we always balance it with traditional knowledge, because we believe our ancestors knew a lot, that will stand us in good stead here today. And they have. And it's something that I'm pleased to see is now recognized internationally through the BBNJ Treaty. So I look forward to the operationalizing of that treaty in the near future.
There is also emphasis on regionalism in the 2050 strategy and in your own remarks just now, as well as in the past. What kind of cooperative efforts do you think would be most beneficial to countries in the Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific region, together with, say, a regional organization like ASEAN that shares many concerns that Pacific Island nations do? What kind of cooperative efforts do you think might be able to move the needle on the climate change issue, but also on other issues of interest to both regions?
I had the privilege of visiting Indonesia last December at the invitation of the foreign minister, and I ended up at ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta. And that was a timely visit because, in discussions with the Director General of ASEAN, it became very clear to me that there's a lot that we can work together on, but also, more importantly for us right now, there's a lot we can learn from ASEAN. And so I'm so pleased that just a couple of weeks ago, my Deputy Secretary General was in Jakarta at the ASEAN conference to sign the first MOU between ASEAN and the forum. And we look forward, to learning a lot more and doing a lot of engagement with ASEAN in the near future.
I mean, coming from the ASEAN region, I think we have a lot to learn from the Pacific Islands and the PIF in general. So an exchange both ways, I think, would benefit both regions moving forward. Secretary General, we're here in the United States, of course, and last year there was the historic PIF United States Summit. Are you able to preview for us what the upcoming second summit might look like?
Yes, indeed. It's something that we're very much looking forward to as a region, engaging with the U.S. at the highest levels. And currently, our senior officials are in negotiations with Washington over the outcomes that we would like to see when we meet with President Biden next week. And I'm very hopeful that those outcomes will translate into concrete actions moving forward. Because right now there's a lot of issues and challenges confronting our Pacific region. Not apart from climate change, there's our economic recovery from COVID-19. Having small economies, we've been hit really hard with the border closures. But yeah, it is something that we are very much looking forward to engaging with the U.S., and I'm sure that there will be very positive outcomes from our engagement.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to those positive outcomes. I want to draw a little bit on your personal experience. I was taken by the fact that you used to be a pearl farmer. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about the industry and how that industry, as well as fishing, has changed over the years, given what's going on with climate destruction.
Yeah, I need to be very careful what I say about pearl farming because my wife is in the audience. If anything, she was more in charge of the operation than I was. But yes, if I am to be honest, I should have stuck with being a pearl farmer rather than venturing into politics. But yeah, being in pearl farming, you come to appreciate the importance of the ocean, as I stressed in my statement. You see, how the ocean changes, and with it, the associated risks and problems for pearl farming, because the warming water has had a really devastating impact on the pearling industry, and I think moving forward, that will continue to be the case, unless there is a dramatic reversal. But yeah, the ocean is very critical to us in the Pacific. In fact, we refer to ourselves as people of the ocean, and rightly so, because our identity and our culture is very much based on the ocean. And it is our responsibility as custodians of the Blue Pacific to ensure that, we maintain that resource in good condition, not just for ourselves, but also for the whole world. And I'm pleased to add that currently we have the healthiest stock of tuna in the world, and we supply about 50% of the world's tuna needs. So you can continue to rely on us because our tuna stock is very healthy, and we're very conscious of our responsibility to keep it so.
Well, we know who to turn to if we want any tuna. Some questions have come up from the audience. Secretary General, what has been the most significant development in the Pacific Islands region since the last conference, which was last year? And how do you view these developments?
I think for me, the most important development since last year has been our ability to come together as one united forum family. And it's lovely to see that despite our internal differences, we've been able to put that aside and restore our unity, because in terms of the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, it is based on and predicated on our being united as one. And so for me, that is very, very important moving forward. And I guess at that level is one of the most important developments since last year.
Of course, there have been other fairly important developments as well further afield, namely the contestation over Taiwan, but also the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And a couple of questions have just come up over both those issues. I wonder, Secretary General, if you could give us your views on how Pacific Island nations might play a role if there were to be a conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan.
Well, the Blue Pacific Ocean is named that because we are an ocean of peace. And that is how we want to remain, an ocean of peace. And in fact, our overriding foreign affairs principle is this, that we want to be friends to all and enemy to none. And so that really sums up our foreign affairs approach to partnerships.
If I can just follow up on that, of course, the Pacific Islands region has unfortunately been the victim of war in the past and continues to suffer the consequences of that till this day. Is there a preemptive strategy that the Pacific Islands will take in order to prevent another devastating war occurring in the region?
Well, I'm sure that we've learned so much from what happened in the past, and we're determined as a collective to ensure that never happens again. So, in terms of what you've asked, I really don't want to go there. It is something that may or may not happen, but we don't want to venture into that for now.
So the question about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Secretary General, how is the PIF responding to what's going on in Europe and its impact? Has there been any impact at all, directly or indirectly, on your region?
Yeah, there has been some very serious economic impacts, with the price of goods having gone up and the shortage of supplies, being more or less at the end of the supply chain in the Pacific, as I mentioned, because of our geographical isolation and the tyranny of distance. We pay the highest price, for inflation and for the increase in the price of goods and the scarcity of goods. So it has had a real impact on our economies in the Pacific.
You spent quite a bit of your career trying to make connectivity happen between the islands in your country, but also in the Pacific in general. Can you give us sort of an update on what's going on with connectivity efforts, whether physical infrastructure-wise or digital-wise?
Yes, I think our region, because of its being spread over a wide area of the Pacific Ocean, connectivity is absolutely critical. Our e-commerce strategy, in order to drive our recovery from the economic damages that we suffered from COVID-19, is absolutely important. And in fact, just over a month ago in Papua New Guinea, our IT ministers met, to drive this move to ensure that there is better connectivity in our region and with our region. And so I can't stress enough the importance of connectivity, not just in terms of, telephone or internet or whatever, but also in terms of transportation. And it is something that our leaders are having a serious look at now as we recover from COVID-19 and the borders are opening. And it is an issue of priority that needs to be addressed by our leaders, yes.
If I may, Secretary General, I think the Pacific Islands, along with some of the communities in other parts of the world, again, have a lot to teach us in terms of this idea of relationality. So not just connectivity from a physical standpoint, but how you approach connectivity in your relation to others, to people around you, to the environment. And you've spoken at length about this, so I think that dimension is going to add value to some of the, honestly, quite superficial debates that we've been having about connectivity in the region.
Yeah, and I'm so pleased, that we have now a serious partnership with ASEAN, because I'm sure that there's a lot we can learn from ASEAN. And I remember the point that the foreign minister of Indonesia drove home when we met. And that is, Indonesia really is a state of islands, just like us in the Pacific. In fact, with over 1,000 islands, connectivity among them is very, very important. And it's good to see that they have achieved that, not just with internet and connectivity of that nature, but also with transportation. Having airports and and associated facilities of that nature in all of the outer islands. So it is something that we aspire to, and I'm sure we can learn a lot from our ASEAN friends.
Yeah, Indonesia, when you think about the scale of challenges they have, 17,000 islands, natural disasters, but also even my own country, Malaysia, our country is split directly in the middle by the South China Sea. So when we talk about connectivity, you're right, and there's a lot that we can work on that together. Secretary General, the question about geopolitics refuses to die down. There is another question about the recent security agreement signed between the Solomon Islands and China. What are the implications of that for the Pacific regional security?
Well, you know, we respect the sovereignty of the Solomon Islands to do what they need to do in their own best interest. And that is the position that, you know, the Pacific Islands have taken. That is their business. But also with the acknowledgement that what one member does necessarily affects the others. You know, it is what is currently driving our progress on that initiative, on that issue, that we respect the sovereignty of the Solomon Islands and also the right of other countries within the forum to do what they think is best in their own national interest. I can say the same for Australia, you know, with the AUKUS Treaty. You know, they've done that because they think it's in their best interest, and we respect that. As I made clear in my statement, you know, respecting each other is absolutely critical to the collective.
Secretary General, what strategies and actions do you envision Japan and the United States implementing to effectively support Pacific Island nations, particularly addressing their vulnerabilities in the face of US-China competition and ensuring their autonomy, especially in matters of maritime security, like the situation with Chinese marine survey ships in Palau's exclusive economic zone?
Can I make this point? You know, our approach to foreign affairs, being friends to all and enemy to none, necessarily puts us in a position where, you know, what is happening geopolitically really is of no concern to us. And I think what we must resist is being drawn into that. However, we must realize and appreciate that this is an opportunity for us to leverage, you know, some benefits, as I made clear in my statement, for our Pacific Island and countries. And that is, you know, what we need to see and what we need to gain out of the current geopolitical tension.
Secretary General, perhaps a final question. This, of course, is the third annual Oceans Dialogue. I wonder if you had a wish list to draw upon, what you would like for us to discuss in the next year. I know we're just getting started with this year's, but in planning ahead for next year, what would your wish list be for us to discuss?
Well, top of my list would be, you know, a request to the rest of the world to stop treating the ocean as a dump. You know, the ocean is very precious to us, and we can't maintain it in the pristine condition that we inherited it if others, you know, continue to treat it as a dump. You know, they can dump their waste, whatever waste. So that is my top of my wish list.
Excellent. And of course, I was just going to close this off, but one more question has come up, which I hope you'll indulge me in asking you. In your remarks, you said for partners to work with us rather than around us. Mm-hmm. Who are the actors that you would like to work with, and what would be the ideal outcomes of collaboration?
Well, without naming names, you know, there are many, as I made clear in my statement, and we welcome all of them. But, you know, the partnership has got to be genuine, and it must be built around our priorities. Because, you know, we made it very clear in our 2050 what our priorities are. And we welcome, you know, partnerships from anybody who are willing to engage with us on those terms.
Secretary General, Maitaki Maata, I hope I pronounced that right.
It's beautiful.
Excellent, I'm glad I got that right. Thank you so much for your insights. I think, honestly, personally speaking, the Pacific Islands has a lot to teach the rest of us in the world, and we look forward to your continued leadership in stewarding the environment to a better future. But please, everyone, join me in thanking the Secretary General Puna for his perspectives.
Thank you.
Can I invite all of you to coffee break in the foyer? And we'll see you back here at 11:15.